This Saturday marks the 58th anniversary of the March on Washington. On August 28th, 1963, more than 250,000 people rallied at the Lincoln Memorial, where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. made his historic I Have a Dream speech. The march ultimately helped secure the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and later the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Now, several groups of activists plan to march on Washington again as more states move to pass restrictive voting rights bills. For more, I want to bring in Cliff Albright. He's the co-founder of Black Voters Matter. Cliff, welcome. Thanks for being with us. So there are currently two voting rights bills being considered by Congress, the For the People Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. What are the key differences between the two?
Hi, Elaine. Thanks for having me. H.R. 1, the For the People Act, deals with establishing new standards for elections, in terms of voter registration, voting day being a holiday, mandatory hours, mandatory access to early voting and things of that nature. And also it deals with a range of things that they even go beyond voter access. It deals with campaign finance reforms. It deals with the critical issue that we're dealing with this year or later on this year, the issue of gerrymandering, right? It deals with redistricting and being able to draw fair districts. And so it deals with a wide range of things from voter access to other aspects of what protects this democracy. That's the For the People Act. Then you've got H.R. 4, which is the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, which basically seeks to reestablish and re-strengthen the Voting Rights Act of 1965. We know that Voting Rights Act was gutted 8 years ago by the Supreme Court in a decision that took away what we mainly refer to as pre-clearance provisions. That's the provisions that says that certain states and certain jurisdictions would have to get any potential changes in election law cleared by the federal government, by the Department of Justice. So if they were trying to change the early voting days, if they were trying to close polling places, if they were trying to make vote by mail harder, those things would have to get pre-cleared by the federal government. We're also trying to get the Voting Rights Act strengthened because of a recent Supreme Court case that also struck down another section of the act. And so basically the John Lewis Voting Rights Act seeks to restore certain powers to the Voting Rights Act, while the first one, the For the People Act, seeks to establish new access, new standards for voter access.
And Cliff, what are you concerned will happen if these bills are not passed?
I mean, it's very simple. We're already seeing it happening over the past 6 or 7 months, where we've seen this wave of voter suppression bills that have been sweeping the country. It's been well documented, 47, 48 states, close to 400 bills that have been considered, 18 states that have already passed some form of restrictions on voting access, several states that are still looking at voter suppression bills, including the state of Texas, which has now tried not once, not twice, but now 3 times to pass what could be the harshest form of voter suppression that we've seen in the country, coming close to other states like Georgia, which already passed its bill, and Florida, which already passed its bill, and again, several other states. And so what we're afraid of is that this trend will continue, that they'll continue to just deepen the voter suppression. They'll continue to make it so that politicians are picking the voters instead of voters picking the elected officials. And perhaps the most scary part of this trend of bills that we've seen is this wave of what we now call election suppression, right? It's the ability of these conservative Republican state legislatures to overturn elections, to eliminate local boards of elections, to take powers away from secretaries of state like we saw them do in Arizona. In fact, this just over the past week right here in Georgia, the state has started the process of trying to eliminate and replace the Fulton County Board of Elections. That's the largest county, most populous county in the state. It's the state that has the most black voters in the entire state. What we're seeing is that they figured out that they don't have to suppress every vote. They don't have to get rid of every county, but if they target certain counties with surgical precision, a county like Fulton County, that would have literally, if you put some of these bills that are now laws in place in the recent elections, both the Georgia runoff as well as the presidential election in November, that election would have had a different outcome because Republicans would have been able to do exactly what Donald Trump asked them to do, which was to find some votes or to get rid of some votes and to just overturn an election. That's how scary these bills are.
Cliff, I wonder, the Biden administration has voiced support for voting rights legislation. Other voting rights activists and advocates have said that they'd like to see the president do more. I wonder how you see it.
Yeah, you're exactly right. President Biden has said several times that he supports the passage of these voting rights laws. He gave a very passionate speech a couple of weeks ago where he said that voter suppression is the worst that he's seen, is the biggest threat since the Civil War. Right? That's quite a statement, and it's one that I and others agree with. But he then follows that by saying things like, but he doesn't want to end the filibuster. He doesn't. He barely wants to modify it, and the modifications that he's kind of suggested he could possibly support, he hasn't forcefully demanded that there be a change and reform to the filibuster. And even the reforms that he suggested don't go far enough. He's mentioned a standing or a talking filibuster. Well, even back in the day when they had a standing or talking filibuster in the days of Strom Thurmond, for the decades that they were blocking civil rights legislation with this same filibuster, even when it was standing or a talking filibuster, it still squashed civil rights legislation. We cannot continue to allow that same filibuster to block our attempts right now. So we've been asking the president to do more, to lean in, to pick a side. You can't be on the side of voting rights and be on the side of the filibuster. We need him to use everything that he has at his disposal. We need him to keep up the same energy that he's had over these months for infrastructure. We need that same energy when it comes to voting rights. That's what we're asking the president, to lean into the Senate. Ask them, in fact, to come back from recess. They shouldn't be on vacation while we're still waiting for our voting rights. You've got Texas legislators that have been threatened with arrest because they've been fighting the fight, the good fight, in order to resist voter suppression. We don't have time for the Senate to be out on recess. We need President Biden to really lean in the same way that he's done for infrastructure, the same way that he's done for other parts of his agenda. If you really believe that black voters have always had your back and that you have ours, we need you to show it now. And not just for black voters, but for every voter, every marginalized voter, black, brown, young, progressive, every voter whose rights are at stake at this critical moment. We need him to do more. We need him to have his Lyndon B. Johnson moment.
And Cliff, I know you and other members of Black Voters Matter will join several other groups at the Make Good Trouble rally in Washington on Saturday. What's the goal there? What are you hoping to accomplish with that event?
Yeah, we're hoping to just continue to push, right? We're hoping to, like the name of the rally says, make good trouble in the spirit of John Lewis. He said, when you see something wrong, sometimes you got to get in the way. You got to get in good trouble, but good trouble, necessary trouble. And so that's what we're going to be talking about on Saturday. And we're going to be doing it talking about voting rights, but not just voting rights in isolation, because we're going to be talking about a range of issues that are near and dear to our hearts and near and dear to the communities that we serve. We're going to be talking about immigration. We're going to be talking about police violence and gun violence. We're going to be talking about climate change. We're going to be talking about ending sexism and other phobias, right? Other gender discrimination. And so we're talking about a range of issues because we're trying to drive home the point that while voting rights is important as a fundamental aspect of our society, of this democracy, it's not in isolation. The reason it's so important is because it's the very thing, our voting rights are the thing that lets our voices be heard on a range of other issues. So we want to talk about all of those issues, 10 of those issues that we're talking about, including the issue of ending the filibuster. We're going to be talking about those issues on Saturday at the Make Good Trouble rally because we need people to see the connections. Why fighting for voting rights is so important is because it's the thing that lets us get progress on all these other issues that impact our lives every day.
Finally, Cliff, in an effort to mobilize young black voters, your organization held its Freedom Ride for Voting Rights earlier this summer. What kind of turnout did you see, and what have you been hearing from people about this issue?
You know, it was an incredible experience for us as the organizers, for all of the partner organizations, for all the communities that we went to. The Freedom Ride, we went to 10 states, and I'm counting D.C. as a state because one of the issues that we were fighting for was D.C. statehood. We went to 10 states over the course of 10 days. We made about 20 different stops over those 10 days in big cities, capital cities like Atlanta and Raleigh in North Carolina. We went to West Virginia. We went to smaller communities. As we crossed the borders from state to state, we would stop in smaller communities. And everywhere we go, we had great turnout. Everywhere we go, we had folks showing up and expressing their passion for why voting rights are so important and why they wanted to get involved. One of the things that we said all throughout the course of the Freedom Ride is that everybody's a Freedom Rider. Everybody can be an organizer. Everybody's got a role to play. And so we saw incredible passion, incredible energy, and we heard people that were really thankful because we were doing it in the context of talking about the Freedom Ride. It was the 60th anniversary of the 1961 run Freedom Rides, and part of what we wanted to do was to kind of create and amplify that feeling of being in the movement, of being in a Freedom Ride, of direct action and civil disobedience. And I really believe that part of the spinoffs that we've seen of the Freedom Ride has been some of the actions that we've seen in states and in Washington, D.C. since then. We've seen civil disobedience in D.C. at Senate offices. We've seen Congress people. We've had 4 members of the Congressional Black Caucus get arrested with us over the past 6 weeks or so. That's because we're seeing more civil disobedience. We're going to be at an action even tomorrow in D.C. at Lafayette Park, taking the message to the White House and to President Biden. That spirit of direct action and civil disobedience that King talked about so eloquently in his letter from Birmingham jail, that's the spirit that we need right now. That's the action we need right now for this fight that we're in. We are in a fight for our lives, and we've got to be willing to go the route of being civilly disobedient in a respectful way, not in a January 6th kind of a way, right? But in a respectful way where we're willing to show that we are willing to even be arrested, to put ourselves at risk because our voting rights are that important to us.
All right, Cliff Albright. Cliff, thanks very much for taking the time to share your perspective with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.